I'm so excited to have you on the Rethink Reality podcast. Welcome to the stage.
Don, thank you for having me. I just know this is going to be a lot of fun.
We're going to start off full speed ahead. Do you think Genie 3 is a technical step toward proving we live in a simulation?
Yes, let's get philosophical from the get. Look, I certainly think it does. I mean, it feels like kind of playing a dream, right? It feels like it has that dreamlike quality that the earliest image diffusion models had, including their sort of inability to deal with symbols and numbers. And it reminds me of being in a physical, like an actual dream, where you go look at your watch, look away, and you look back at your watch, and it's a completely different time. Or you look at your lock screen, and the numbers violently change. And this feels like that. And many neuroscientists say that reality isn't actually reality, like this objective reality that we all see. It's more of a controlled hallucination. If you want to get philosophical about it, absolutely. Looking at some of those things is, taking a distillation of all like visual information on the internet, and you're like looking down and seeing an embodied character, and you're seeing the shadow of a GoPro on the head on some of the generations. I just want to know what happens when you go look at a mirror. What do you see when you look at a mirror? Is it the hero with 1,000 faces? I don't know.
Well, I feel like it's going to be so contextual. I feel like, if you think of quantum collapsing waveforms based off of your observation,
Sure.
I feel like it's contextual. Someone did a really interesting demo with Genie 3. They showed somebody watching a video in there.
Yeah, in the conference room.
Yes, they were in a conference room, but the person was watching a video of like some jungle safari looking thing. And then the player in Genie 3's perspective turns around and walks away, and the reality turned into that jungle.
It's amazing. These are the augmented reality dreams we've always had that are, in a sense, coming to fruition synthetically.
Yeah. So like if we can create infinite, persistent worlds, environments in real time, how will that blur the line between simulation and lived experience for the next generation?
Gosh, I mean, I think it's already happening, right? Like I like to call it the sort of audio visual Turing test. Is sort of like these phones are already the window through which we see the world, right? These screens, and then the content that we see on it is similarly, 2D projections and captures and reductions of reality that, we used to form consensus about what's happening in the world. And already you're seeing those lines blur. It's funny. It's like the other day, my mother sent me this WhatsApp forward. Is this story of like a lion that befriends a little monkey, and they're just like hanging out and on in like a safari landscape, and she's like, wow, look at this amazing story. And I was like, this is AI generated, right? I'm like, she's like, what do you mean? No, but it goes so well with the story. I was like, total VO3 generations. And so already, I think the lines are blurring. And I think what's going to happen is instead of, the visual Turing test has been shattered almost every single week, and sort of the bar for what you can do keeps going up. The final frontier obviously is going to be XR devices, right? Like augmented and virtual reality devices that can reskin reality on demand in real time and kind of give you that full, like a spectrum, a dial that you can crank between full reality to full virtuality. And do you want to selectively reskin what you see, or do you want to reskin everything all together? Do you want to be walking around Tatooine, or do you just want like all the advertisements blurred out? Or, I think this future is absolutely inevitable. And kind of what that will do to us is I think it'll, to draw the analogy between the internet sort of being a digital twin of reality, our social networks and interests within it. I think similarly, we'll be able to, just like in the digital realm, we find the, islands that we feel most comfortable on, whether that's algorithmically curated or we actively go and seek it. It's human for us to find those type of communities. I think similarly, we'll be able to opt into different sort of instantiations of reality. There's certainly good and bad that comes with that.
Yeah. I mean, reality is so subjective now, but I feel like it becomes super personalized moving forward. I even had this vision one day. I want to make an interface where the x-axis, when you slide on it, is abstraction. So you can make something super literal that you're seeing, or turn it into like full cartoon, goofy, elaborate. And then the y-axis is how immersed I want it to be. So like if you go all the way up here, it's full VR. If you go all the way here, it's like very lightweight, gentle heads-up display. Somewhere in the middle is like an augmented reality world. But if I had those two axes to kind of like control, that's going to probably become a normal thing soon. And I wonder, does it matter that we have different realities in the future that you're seeing? are humans cooked or are we cooking?
I tend to be, glass half full. I tend to be more of an optimist. I would say a cautious optimist, cautiously optimistic person about the future. It's interesting what you're saying too, even with the X and Y axis. There's a graph I similarly like to make, but more of like a chart where you plot out the various initiatives across that X and Y axis that you defined, about like factual renditions of the real world to super stylized, to like how anchored in reality do you want these things to be, like, or do you want them to take you away from it? And you can see efforts all across the spectrum, right? Like we've got some amazing efforts. Like, I don't know if you had a chance to see some of the stuff, like I think you probably did, Google Earth is doing with creating sort of like Alpha Earth, right? Making all of this geospatial, petabytes of geospatial information queryable. Like you can ask the Earth questions about like this, sort of factual abstraction of reality. It's still an abstraction, but it's very anchored in reality. To the other end, where all the video models and like the video to video stuff that we're playing with, and now Genie, where it can be totally fantastical. And so I think like when you plot it out like that, it's clear that these applications are going to be tremendously useful for humans, right? Like, so you can imagine that being super useful for cities, right? Suddenly this capability that was available to a very small number of large players, like your local city council, can be asking the questions that matter to them. On the other hand, it's democratizing entertainment as well. And, with the more fantastical tools, you can turn your mind inside out, like you turn your visions into reality, right? Like, which you obviously do an amazing job of every single day. And of course, if you take the underside of that, right? Like, could you be querying this model to do harm in the world and figure out how to do harm in the world? Yes, probably. On the other hand, could you be creating misinformation, disinformation that's going to confuse, cause chaos, create anxiety? Absolutely. And like every other tool that we've created, it's inherently dual use. But I like to think that the positive benefits will outweigh the negative, and that we'll figure out how to police and enforce some guardrails around this technology, rather than it being a total, I don't know, crypto anarchist fantasy, or on the other hand, some crazy centralized, 1984 dystopia.
Well, I mean, on the blurry line there, I saw this really cute video that was fully generated that I actually thought was real, maybe too long, to be honest. I was like, I think that happened. And then I later learned, no, it didn't. It was all these bunnies, a bunch of cute little bunnies all jumping on a trampoline in the backyard of a house. It looked so good. It looked like security footage at night of the back porch of someone's backyard. And there's just a few bunnies sitting on the trampoline, and then they all start taking turns gently jumping. There wasn't a lot of crazy motion blur. The movements weren't that exaggerated. They were subtle enough. The physics was very accurate. Yeah. The sound felt accurate. And I kind of just scrolled past it. Later, my friend Catherine, I see her talk about how all these people just thought that this video was real. And I'm like, no, I'm one of those people. And I have a VFX background and augmented reality background. If I'm getting fooled, most people are probably getting fooled too, I would hope or assume.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the mom example that I gave you, you've probably seen the numerous Facebook groups where it's just like cute, adorable photos that are AI generated, and it's just like, it's like you got the boomers and the Gen Xers just engaging with it, like it's catnip for them, right? Like. And that speaks to the downside, right? Like where these algorithms are already so good at taking human generated content largely thus far on one end, and then viewers on the other end giving you exactly what you want. So like almost deciding 3 videos before you scroll to it in your feed. Like that's the thing we should rank and place there. Once you can create a feedback loop there between your interests and the creation itself, like that's going to be a very addictive platform, right? Like, and, it seems like Instagram and YouTube, some of these platforms are going to be more cautious about it. But I think this is where like the disruption opportunity comes up. A new player like TikTok could enter the scene,
right,
and give you Mountain Dew straight to the vein for like, 30 seconds, a dose. And it's infinite, right? Like, I don't know if you played with Grok's new image generation feature.
I've looked at all the clips of it on Twitter, but I haven't played with it myself yet.
Go play with it, because an interesting UX change there is if you put in a prompt and as you scroll, it'll keep generating new stuff for you. So you're kind of generating like almost like, rather than you having to like Midjourney style hit enter, give your parameters, it's just doing it for you passively. And it gives you a taste of, and then you can choose to make one of those a video generation. But it gives you a taste for, I think what they're doing is, it's collecting all these signals for like what are the most compelling generations, and then how can you do that automatically? Just like chain of thought models have collapsed, the 4 or 5 prompts that you might have to give GPT-4, O3 would just give it for you. And now I guess like GPT-5 thinking, gosh, the nomenclature keeps changing, but
right.
I think the same thing's going to happen here, where it's going to be more human curated to start, and gosh, the model and the algo knows you too well. And here's the things that I think Don Allen wants to see at any given moment.
I mean, I feel like that's, 6 months out or less before we start seeing major platform plays where they just they know you better than you know yourself. And they just say, instead of trying to find the algorithmic content that's already made by somebody and filtering it to you, why doesn't the platform just generate it on the fly as you're scrolling? Have you played with Suno, the music AI generation app? They added that user interface recently too. So after you type in a prompt, if you scroll, it will generate a variation of it.
Cool.
You scroll and you're like, oh, actually a little different. And it kind of lets you generate on demand to kind of fine tune your taste. And suddenly you stop scrolling and you're listening longer. That signal gets louder and they're like, this music track, this makes sense for you. Okay, noted. And it's interesting. I didn't know they were doing that for image generation with Grok. So it's interesting seeing that kind of new UI form.
Totally.
With GPT-5 that just launched, I think yesterday, right?
Yep.
Have you been playing with it at all?
Yeah, definitely. I've been asking it to like, I love doing this thing where ChatGPT has such context on our conversations, right? Like that we've had. I ask it to bring up stuff like, what am I doing well? What are my blind spots? Like, what are things? I pulled this from a shout out Gary Tan. He had a really nice prompt suggestion in there. It's like, what are things that you couldn't do previously that you can do now that would be useful for me? And it gave me a bunch of different suggestions. It's like, it sounds like you can almost like maintain like lightweight to-do lists and task lists within the chat context now and kind of keep these going. It's like one step towards your helpful AI assistant. Like, I think on the other hand, it's sort of like a little bit overhyped to be very very honest.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was looking back to one of my tweets from 2023. I'm a huge fan of this TV show called Person of Interest. I might have recommended to you last time I was in the Astoria HQ, but if you haven't seen it yet, you should check it out. It's basically about a world in which multiple artificial superintelligences are having governments and people work at their behest without them even knowing. And so like what happens when you have like an ASI system with morality in it and one that's completely open-ended and controllable that humans can direct on anything good, bad, or ugly.
Mm-hmm.
But, and in that, there's a scene where like the AI comes online for the first time and this experience the admin has of like turning on the AI. And I had this post from 2023 that went viral that was like, turning on GPT-5 for the first time. Like, this is what it's going to feel like. And we all have this like idea of this sort of crazy exponential, and it sort of tapered off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It feels more like an incremental update and more of a user experience boost, where instead of this like model picker drop down or modal where you have to pick between like 7 or 8 different variants, and pros know, hey, I'll do my research with O3 and then I'm going to have GPT 4.5 summarize it because it's way better at writing. That's been my usual workflow. Their idea is that you kind of have a model router that can do it all in, just GPT 5 proper. But even there, if you see some of the recommendations from OpenAI employees, like Rune was saying, like, I just leave it on GPT 5 thinking for the most part, which is the equivalent of what O3 was. So it's not this gigantic game changer. Honestly, that's a good and a bad thing. On the good side, it's funny. I don't know if you saw a bunch of people were like, all the consultants are like, oh, thank God, we still have a job for another year. GPT-5 isn't going to take everything over. But at the same time, it's like, as this modality is slowing down, we're seeing so many exciting things happening in other modalities like real-time interactive videos. That's my sort of like rounded out take on GPT-5. Curious what you think. Is it overhyped, underhyped, something in between?
I mean, I love the tool. I also think it was a bit overhyped for what I'm using, because I'm kind of able to do most of the things they're advertising with existing models. It's just nice that it's all in one. So I would say it's more like a convenience boost, convenience gain, where I'm like, wow, this will probably be increasingly more of my driver because of it's unifying a lot of things. But I don't know if it's as revolutionary as I expected, like from your tweet, when I was like, okay, it's going to be this thing that we can never put back in the... I thought it was going to be a Pandora's box opening, and it felt like Pandora's box is still closed, actually. It's like, or like maybe like a little beam of light fit through the side of it, but it's not fully opened out the gate. At least when I saw this one, I was like,
totally.
So it seems like there's kind of a new bottleneck happening, right? Like, is it imagination, the bottleneck? Is it your skill? Is it your time? Do you see any new bottlenecks in this new paradigm that we're in where, we can kind of generate anything we want now reliably? Uh, is there any, do you see any new bottlenecks for us?
I think there are a couple of bottlenecks, right? Like one is on the distribution side, and then let's talk about the creation side because I think there's more philosophical points on the latter. On the distribution side, it's just time, and how many eyeballs for how many days are you consuming content, and how many feeds can your content get into when the amount of content is just on this crazy, like it's just exploding, right? Like the volume, velocity, and just of content
Right.
is going to keep going up. So we've only got limited hours in the day to do things, right? So that's certainly one bottleneck. On the more philosophical end, this is something I've been thinking about. It's like, let me pull up my draft tweet because I think it like encapsulates the sentiment
Oh, I love this.
pretty well, which is sort of like, here, and you do cut stuff, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. We're still research and drafts. I know the new head of product at Twitter has been getting a bunch of things being like, dude, I just want to be able to search my bookmarks and drafts. Can you please give me this?
Yeah, if they can ever add that, that'd be great.
Oh, there we go. It's like basically the real issue is we have these infinite magical powers at our disposal. Yet, since our content diets are shrinking our attention spans, we lack the imagination and the endurance to do anything with them. And this is really hard. I don't know if you feel guilty of this, where there are projects I'll take to 75% of the way, and then like 2 new tools drop, and I'm like, oh, fuck, but I need to like go jump on this thing. And suddenly you've got this like sort of like, like battlefield of like 75%, 80% completed projects. And I think it's like, it almost feels like using all these multiple AI tools, it feels like we're making like many small dents in the universe, but not a big one. Like, and I think this is something that's lost where people who commit themselves to doing a book or like in which you've done in record time. So shout out to you. But like most people like are committing to doing a book over the course of a year or like a movie, let's say over the course of many years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even a long form, like 20-minute videos are now considered long form on YouTube, right? As a testament to our shrinking attention spans. And so that's a commitment where like some of these YouTubers are spending 2 or 3 months to make a piece of content. Now, when we're able to crank things out, it's like we're making all these little dents, but not a really big one. And so I think this is the problem with having infinite magical powers at our disposal, is just like, how do we put them to use in a meaningful way rather than just like littering the world with a bunch of kind of interesting projects, but none that really are moving or meaningfully.
I love that observation about how, like, when it comes to projects, it feels like we're kind of like sprinkling a lot of effort over like a wide vista versus having the luxury of going deep and like growing. So is there a project or an experiment that you've worked on that never saw the light of day? And if so, why? Why didn't you decide to release it? And can you share a little bit about it here?
Intelligence capabilities have gotten so good. And some of the ways to use like, Master and Duster and a couple of these really novel papers that let you localize images, even when you don't have a ton of overlap between all of them, which, as you know, you're deep into photogrammetry as well. You need overlap between the images. Now you can kind of, if you have a good, decent reconstruction, if you got a couple of images, you can figure out where they are relative to that very easily. It's some real like CSI, like enemy of the state shit that's like, you can download off of GitHub. Most people don't know about it.
God, I love that you share this. I did not know about this project, and that's like a really fascinating use of the technology of like global positioning and like kind of piecing pieces together. So yeah, if you ever do share it, let me know. I'd love to reshare it because I just think that's like an interesting use case for the tech. But I see why you might have self-censored in this context.
Yeah. In retrospect, I should have just fucking done it, and then it was like, too many people had done it, and then it was like, oh fuck, now it doesn't even matter, so screw it, let's move on to the next thing.
So speaking about kind of Google Earth and Katrina, I saw a video that you did recently, and I wanted to ask, what surprised you the most about the human impact of Google Earth during Katrina?
I mean, it's insane, right? Like, we kind of view this as this, like, Earth as this exploration tool where you go look at the roof over your head. That's like the thing that most people do. And the crazy thing was back then when natural disasters happen, right? Organizations like NOAA or even the US Air Force and like FEMA, et cetera, are mobilized to send first responders to help people in need. But of course, you need a near real-time map of what's happening on the ground. And so one of the coolest things, Google Earth did is, as this hourly imagery was being collected, NOAA just didn't have a place to publish it, right? Like, what is your sort of like real-time collaboration picture? Traditionally, and even till date, people use these sort of bespoke geospatial intelligence tools, things like ArcGIS, which a company called Esri makes, all these like geospatial information systems tools that it's almost, think of it like Photoshop or After Effects. It's this like heavyweight local application where you load up all your data sources and then you're creating derived data from it and analysis. So basically, like the coolest anecdote here is like Eric Schmidt shows up and is like, yo, drop all your fucking OKRs, so your objectives and key results. Doesn't matter. Go save lives. And so the Google Earth team basically created sort of an offshoot database where they were publishing this imagery in near real time as it was coming in.
Wow.
And the crazy thing was like, dude, you had like this like operation center where people are sitting there and people are posting on Craigslist. Hey, my grandparents are stuck on the roof of so-and-so on the intersection of X and Y. And there's like in this command center, people are like pulling up the Craigslist listing, typing that into Google Earth, converting that into a latitude and longitude that you can send to a helicopter pilot, and along with like semantically meaningful directions for like, hey, actually there's like a power line there that's broken down, so this is not a good land area, this is a good landing zone, and this is where you can pick them up, and essentially helping with evacuation, which is absolutely wild, right? Like, and yeah, it saved like 4,000 lives. It's kind of crazy. Yeah,
dude, that's insane that you can actually, like, I kind of wanted to like, juxtapose like scary tech with life-saving tech. I mean, that is unbelievable and so important that you can do this now. That is technology that can do this in near real time.
I think that, and it speaks to the tension that Google Earth and Street View started in the world too, right? It's like when you can go anywhere in the world, right? Like you could do view shed analysis to figure out which window can you get a clear shot of somebody. You can literally do this inside of Google Earth Pro, right? And at the same time, it's such an important tool for people to find things and discover things in the real world, and in moments of needs, use it as this sort of common operational picture. And so I love, all technology is dual use. Earth is an example where in Street View too is like, for the most part, it has been a net benefit to everyone's lives, and you will never be lost again.
There you go. I mean, that's like, that should be the slogan.
Yeah, totally. There's a really good book called exactly that, if you're interested in the backstory. Yeah, totally.
Do you think, could a predictive Earth model lead to preventing disasters, or do you think it would lead to like over controlling reality, or somewhere in between?
I think it certainly is going to help in the near term, right? Like you look at what NVIDIA is doing with Earth 2, which is sort of taking like, let's take the imagery from folks like Google, but then let's take all the NOAA data, the atmospheric agencies data, and the plurality of sensors that even like right now they're focusing on examples like Taiwan working with their weather administration, like, oh, typhoon's coming. This is going to disrupt supply chains. Where exactly is this, going to hit in advance? Where do we need to issue evacuation notices? So they're doing that at this like really high resolution using like this upscaling technology, but then also simulating like wind and other weather phenomenon in the city itself. Yeah, Google's doing the same thing. One of the things I had a chance to work on was to create these 3D renditions of the world. I used to be the product lead for photogrammetry, and we would supply these terrain maps of like India and like Bangladesh to this amazing AI research team in Tel Aviv that's now in DeepMind that would do similar kind of like predictive forecasting of where are the, like, which areas are most likely going to be flooded. And then Google search would issue evacuation notices like days and weeks in advance, be like, yo, you're in an area that's at risk, you should probably evacuate. And doing this at country scale, right, is insane. And that tech already exists. And I think the latest crop of models are taking it to this whole new level of precision and fidelity. The most mind-blowing stuff is like the weather prediction stuff to me, because it's getting better and better at long-range prediction. And now we can pretty well forecast out weeks, but the moment we can start doing that on the order of months, I mean, it could drastically change the game, right?
Did you send me that paper of those college students? I think in 2016, they got a permission to get all of NASA's satellite imagery of the world over the like since the 60s. And they did some processing on it, and they were able to so accurately predict rainfall and snow that they were able to months in advance predict where a food shortage was going to be.
That's
beforehand.
Wild. Yeah.
And then I think the US government saw that and they're like, oh, we just want let's work with that team. And then they've kind of built a model. And I've heard they've sent foreign aid to places before, because they said if there's like a food shortage, then it leads to a rise in dictatorships. It can happen very quickly afterwards. Yeah. So the US government was sending foreign aid to places that were about to have a food shortage. Can you kind of do that level of predictive analysis of like, okay, where's there going to be a crop shortage of like an important grain for a country's economic survival?
Absolutely. Yeah. Tools like Earth Engine, which is sort
Okay.
of like the analysis tool, cloud based. It's like, and Microsoft has something similar. They just went out into a beta access or general availability, actually. It's called Planetary Computer, very broad name, right? Microsoft Planetary Computer. Absolutely. You can do these type of things. And in
Wow.
fact, even like like actual corporations are using this to figure out like where are more mosquitoes going to hatch so that they can figure out how to move their inventory of like bug sprays and like mundane things like that. I mean, and it's cool, right? Like this predictive ability has existed. It's like Amazon does this already, where it's like, yo, Don's been eyeing this thing. We're going to move this closer to him. So suddenly he sees 2-day shipping, and then he's going to, because they already move things, do demand forecasting and move things around. This is just like forecasting for anything in the world, right? Like, and as the data sets get more and more sort of like, this is the theme I'm noticing is like the big data trend circa 2013 onwards started this thing is like, we got all this data, let's put it into like, data lakes and business intelligence warehouses. This is going to make like AI is making that rather manual process a lot easier to how do you take heterogeneous data sets, pull them all together, and ask questions over it. And so Lord only knows what that's going to enable. But already, like, there's a dark side to this too, right? Like I did this interview that you might enjoy seeing with a guy from NVIDIA and a guy from Caltech, Tapia Schneider, who's basically like, it's like at some point we can figure out the weather forecast for the world, but at some point we can dictate it too. And it's turning into this geopolitical rivalry thing. So India and China, China has one of the world's largest geoengineering programs. And since there's the Himalayas, this like massive mountainous range that separates those two countries, the monsoon is a common phenomenon there. And if the monsoon happens on the China side of the mountain, where does the rainfall happen? On the China side or the India side? Means who's going to have like, like whose breadbasket and whose like, crop yields are going to be a lot better, right? And so China's doing some very interesting things to make sure they could extract most of the value there. And that's resulted in saber rattling between China and India. And like, this is stuff like you go see CNN headlines on this, right? It's really, really wild. And so imagine how that is going to get supercharged too, is all these countries with their in quotes sovereign AI efforts have predictive foresight into what happens, but then are going to be sort of incentivized to influence it using a variety of other technologies.
Did you ever read Termination Shock?
Oh, yes, I love that book. Yeah.
Okay, so I haven't read it yet, but I actually got to meet the author. I had dinner with him.
Neil Stephenson, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
And I asked him about it, and he was saying like almost like 4 months after he released that book, an independent researcher in Mexico started releasing sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere to control rainfall. And they were inspired by the book. And he was like, oh, crap.
Yeah, exactly.
Like someone was like,
be careful
that's a
what you
great
wish for.
idea. Well, yeah, I asked him, are you working on any more sci-fis? And he's kind of like, he said he's scared to write more sci-fi because it keeps happening.
Yeah, I mean, science fiction has long been sort of a roadmap or wireframe prototype of the future, right?
So do you think we're living in a 4D reality already? Like everything has an index on top of every entity is like a smart object in Unreal Engine?
Well, it depends on sort of your spiritual tradition, right? Or your background or your faith or whatever you want to call it. In South Asian and Indian traditions, right, there's this notion of Maya, right? Like this was a huge inspiration, obviously, for the Wachowskis and the Matrix, right? Like the simulation within the simulation even. And so Maya is the illusion that we live in. And then you have all these like entities, almost you call them demons or agents, you could almost call them, like
right.
that. And one of them, two of them are Chitr and Gupat, and sort of paired together. And Chitr basically these are scribes that essentially write down everything you say and do in the physical world, like anything, all your karmic actions, right? Like your karmic record, your history of things you've done. All of that stuff is like, basically documented by Chitr. That's, you say these things, you do these things, these interactions you have. And then Gupath means like sort of hidden. Gupt means hidden. And like, what are the things you're thinking? And, like toying about in your head that you never say or articulate in a physical sense, but you've got them in your noggin. And yeah, so like these scribes exist. And the way sort of like I think of the systems that we're building as sort of like digital manifestations of exactly that, right? Like when people talk about sort of, what is ChatGPT, in a sense that in a weird way, it's getting access to the things that only Chither would have had access to, because we're now articulating our hopes, wishes, desires, anxieties, worries to these large language models that then help us make decisions, right? And so, yeah, all this to say, I absolutely feel like reality, whatever the underpinning of reality is, and I don't know what that is, but it feels like, in a sense, we're constructing systems that mirror things that spiritual traditions have been talking about since time immemorial. And there's something very beautifully poetic about that, and almost implies that maybe some nature, like our existence, might be cyclical, and we go through these cycles of creation and destruction that keep on and on into perpetuity.
It's kind of like a beautiful thing to think that these are like mirrors to each other. Like the technology would start to mirror spirituality. And I wonder if it's like a pendulum in time where like we go through human, life forms, or time itself will go through periods where it's more technological, and it might shift to be more spiritual. It might shift back to be more, at higher and higher levels of abstraction each time.
Totally, yeah.
So here's a fun question: privacy. Do we need it?
I think this is the $1 trillion question, and I think we do need it, but I think we need to redefine it, right? And I mean, I'll give you examples, right? Like you can kind of go and find anyone's phone number and address on the internet now. But largely, yeah, there's scams and things that happen, but largely society hasn't fallen apart with that degree of transparency. Same thing with Street View. You could go look at most people's houses, but not everyone's getting burglarized, or all the fears that people had with those technologies, right? Like the moment they come into existence. Same thing with video games. Everyone thought like it's just going to create a generation of like, young men that want to go shoot up everything. It's like, well, like, yes, we have some cases, but by and far, that hasn't been the case. And I mean, I think maybe the examples get a little bit starker with social media, because I think there's sort of like the technology that's perhaps connected us, but then also disconnected us the most is social media. So I have some more complicated thoughts there. But back to privacy, I think like right now, who has a monopoly on surveillance? Well, it's the nation state for the most part, right? And then you've got a bunch of large big tech companies that have their own sort of platforms, that have their own forms of analytics.
A good word.
So those things exist, right? But
no, never heard of it.
So basically, it says that on one hand, were people worried about 1984 and Big Brother. On the other hand, with the rise of cell phones, and you can think of the Rodney King riots as perhaps being the first example of surveillance, where somebody had a camcorder and recorded this like brutal beating up that happened right on camera, and then everyone else got to see it. And so suddenly it's the people that are using surveillance technologies to flip the script and sort of keep governments and larger corporations in check. So that's sort of the idea of surveillance. And so I would like to think that if we're in this world where open source intelligence gets really good, and arguably right now where we are with, you cannot lie about something that's happened on the surface of the earth. Between all the geospatial data that you can get commercially, it's not just the nation state that can see, is like Russia moving, their, defense, battalion from this place to that place, or is there construction happening at this defense installation? It's people who can hold people to, accord with the same technologies, right? And so I like to have a take where, since these tools are getting decentralized and sort of like in the hands of the everyday person, there's an opportunity for us to make sure there's checks and balances both ways. So that's my initial thought. I think we can go deeper into the specifics of this, of what it means when, are we heading into a world where, your Face ID is constantly going to be validating if it's Don Allen using the phone and sending a signal to Instagram to let them know it's a human using it and not a bot, and the good, bad, and ugly that could come from all of that. But that's my initial thought, is like, I think surveillance and surveillance forms this sort of interesting set of checks and balances. Now, I have no disillusions. Like, I am very acutely aware that perhaps the strongest and best capabilities, the best sensors, that, are going to be the dominion of the nation state, and perhaps continue to be.
Yeah, I mean, I saw two pieces, Apple Vision Pro right now. If you want to drive one of those persona avatars, you have to do an optic ID scan of your eyeball. Yeah. And so when I talk to another person's persona in there, I can know with confidence that they also did a cryptographic optic scan. So then I kind of trust that virtual apparition of an avatar that I'm seeing in the room. I'm like,
Understand.
oh, I know you had to do a biometric scan, so you are you, and you know that I did that, so I am me. So I already kind of see that evolution of privacy evolving, where you do need to do that Face ID scan to keep verifying over and over again that you are the online entity. I was just so curious if you thought privacy was worth it. So it sounds like we kind of need to redefine privacy. It's like it's up
100%.
for needs a new rediscussion of what it is and what it means. And I love the surveillance, two sides of that coin. That's actually very helpful to hear, because you're right. We didn't have the ability to kind of report these things before we had these surveillance devices in our hands. Now we can report stuff and spit truth to power, and vice versa.
Exactly. Like events happen and you've got these craziest number of multi-camera perspectives on it, right? Like, and like it's kind of amazing what the hive mind can do when you put them, to work. But this tension doesn't go away, right? This tension of almost like the things you say, and this came up in my conversation with Eric Schmidt at TED this past year. It's like the things you say to like prevent 1984, the things you create to prevent 1984 can almost accidentally bring 1984 into fruition, right? Like suddenly in 1984, like Big Brother had a camera on the TV in every single home and see what you're doing and make sure like and we're now voluntarily digitizing all our activities that can then be queried, right? Like, and it's very, very interesting. I do hope that like edge compute, like everyone keeps talking about edge AI. Like I don't mind my LLM, crunching on some shit in the cloud, but I would like it so that instead of sending like up, can we send out like embeddings or some like distilled insights from the video? Like, so instead of like your home and Ring security camera, right now they send all the pixel feeds up to a centralized server. That's where like object and pose detection and things, a person was detected. Could you do more and more of those things at the edge and just send just for like data purposes too? Like, so there's a commercial incentive. So you're just sending up the detections that were made and maybe like some lightweight embeddings that let you get a close facsimile of what was seen rather than all the pixels, right? Because then that history of pixels, over time, forever, like that becomes, that could have inadvertent consequences. And, I think like people don't even realize what some of those are. Like, forgive me if I'm going more on the chilling side of all of this, because these are just, it's like, so think of Street View data. With Street View data, you could go look at this stuff and be like, if I want to figure out if like, does this house have like kids in it? Okay. You can correlate it with your online activities, which devices are clustered together, what kind of websites are they visiting, and brokers sell that kind of information.
Right.
But you could go look at like, is there a trampoline there? What like political affiliation do they have? Did they have a Trump sign or a Biden sign? And you can infer like their political interest based on that.
Yeah.
On and on and on it goes. And then insurance companies are very interested in using this type of stuff to see like, how do we adjust your insurance premiums based on all of this stuff? You can start doing sociographic analysis, which is why Google and Street View like bans this type of use.
Right.
Like, and there's one research paper that is out there you could go see. It's like based on the kind of cars you have in a neighborhood, you can start figuring out how like, affluent is a neighborhood and start categorizing entire neighborhoods based on that kind of data too.
So for years, I've been using one feature to kind of build my own neural network in Street View. Whenever I'm trying to decide where to move, I look for one certain object detection in a neighborhood consistently. And if it's there, I won't even consider buying anything there. And
what is that?
It's bars on first floor windows.
Wow. Yeah.
I've just noticed a trend where if I correlate that data with a crime map, it's like they're kind of one-to-one. You're like, they have bars on the first floor windows because there's an increase in crime here. And I was like, so now like a friend of mine was coming from Canada. She was going to move to the US. And she's like, how do I know where to live? And I just told her, you can try my hack, go to Street View and look for neighborhoods that don't feel the need to have bars on their first floor windows.
Totally.
And she was like, got it.
That's smart. Yeah.
It's just like a very simple object detection.
It's an indicator. Yeah.
Yeah. You're just like, why do you have that? What are you preventing? Well, you feel the need to prevent this. Because it's probably an issue here.
Totally. Well, you know what's happening on the other hand, Don, which you might find interesting is like, are you familiar with a company called Flock by any chance or Axon? So Flock does kind of home security. Axon owns most of the
I've seen those
body cams, which it's funny, like with VO, people are trying to fake body cam footage now and make it look fisheye and all that with the metadata. But in in Beverly Hills, if you make a 911 call, like within 2 to 3 minutes, there will be a drone overhead streaming something to an RTCC room, which stands for Real Time Crime Center, which is sort of like in CSI where they show the place with a big monitor where all the feeds come in. So like in 2 to 3 minutes, you can have a drone. So these drones are responsible for like, they break up the map into different areas. Dude, they're there. That's the first responder. It's streaming the feed to the RTCC.
Wow.
So before the first human responders actually show up there, you've got good situational awareness. And it's a big deterrent too. So that like, I feel like there's an active break-in happening in a fucking drone with like a light, it's like something over, like recording your moves. You're probably going to be like, all right, maybe it's time to mosey on out of here. And you can imagine that tech's just going to go from the most affluent neighborhoods to everywhere. But at some point, it might start feeling like
Ready Player One, Act 2.
Yeah, really, And so, but the tech, it's so interesting that we have some degree of sort of like back in the day, imagine before body cams, you had no idea, like what was that law enforcement officer doing? And now what's happening is like, when you go and like give somebody a ticket, LLMs are writing up the police documentation for them. And now you've got provenance and you've got a model that's doing the writing. So maybe it'd be biased in some ways, but you could certainly reduce a lot of the human bias that could, try to paint a far more rosier or grim picture, depending on what the motives are. So it's cool. We're creating technological checks and balances too. But again, that same apparatus can feel authoritarian or it can feel like super like utopian, right? Like it just depends on the objective.
I'm looking forward to having like an always on AI companion that also can fly. Think about like the size of like an 8-ball, and I could have it kind of be my safety and security. It could be my eyes when I don't have eyes on my back.
That's cool.
If I get pulled over in LA by an officer, I could have it immediately call a lawyer to like answer and be before the copy gets to my window. I could have a lawyer already there. If it was just ambiently on, it's already recording. And if I could have it homomorphically encrypted, where it only sends data that's needed, then I would be like, this is great. So we've talked about a lot of different technology today. And I wanted to ask you, if you had to put your own money on one technology that will completely reshape how we experience reality in 5 years from now, what would that be and why?
Man, I can't pick one. So I'll be biased and like kind of pick some of my angel investments that reflect the shape of what's to come. So see, look, I've always had these, like, I kind of view it as like the blending reality and imagination as the utility, like the delightful version of this, and then blending the physical and digital worlds. Like those are two intersections that I'm really interested about. Like, how do we take digital technology and have it understand the 3D, 4D world we live in? But then how do we take this like n-dimensional craziness that's in our head and bring it into a medium that you can understand and, kind of turn your mind inside out? So I think like creation tools and then sort of like spatial intelligence tools are the two things that I'm really excited about. Call it like the holodeck and spatial intelligence. Those are the two things that I'm deeply interested in. Can we have this like crazy generator for like whimsical worlds that we can live inside? And so like Pika is obviously doing really fun things on the consumer side. Hedra is trying to target just like, the people avatar instantiation problem. And I really love this company that's called Intangible AI. And Intangible is doing this thing. If you haven't checked them out, basically like it's the workflow that you and I both do, which is sort of like you gray box something out in 3D for explicit control. It's this really talented ex-Unity and ex-EA founder. And then you can use Gen AI to reskin it. But that way you have like a scene graph that you can control, right? So I love that on the exciting side. On the other side, like Schemata is a company that I recently invested in, and they're doing training simulations for the military using Gaussian splatting. And so they're sort of taking Gaussian splats, semantically understanding it. And right now their focus is to sort of, how do you take like a 500-page manual in 11 size font for like a Humvee and turn it into this interactive 3D chatbot that you can talk to, that like an 18-year-old who's just like, will not read that a fucking, Humvee manual, can go ask questions. It highlights different parts of the model, and they're doing really cool things. They want to take that towards this world where you can take a plurality of sensors and create this like common operational picture, very much like the Earth thing, but do that in near real time in 3D. And so I'm really excited. I think these both lines of this thinking of sort of like, building sort of the reality operating system for the physical world and then building the holodeck operating system, I think is very interesting. And I think both of those are going to have transformative applications. And there's a range of companies and efforts that can ladder up to each of those.
Wow. So, I mean, I love these two verticals because they are very expansive. So, like with your background, how do you actually stay grounded while reality itself just becomes editable like this?
Like, do you mean in a philosophical sense, or how do I stay up with the craziness, or what do you mean exactly by
I guess
grounded?
let's go on more philosophical, knowing me,
Yeah.
just a little more philosophical.
like
How
it.
do you stay grounded when you're like, okay, reality can go internal, I can go external. How do you stay grounded in this fact that reality is editable at this point?
It's been a ritual that I've had pretty much since 2016. Around 2014, I started getting into meditation, and then by 2016, it became like a regular mainstay. I start my day meditating, man. It's like there's something about not letting the tech that mediates, again, our interactions in the physical and digital world be this first thing that I go and look at. And I'm not perfect at this. There are days I fail, but I like to meditate for 15 to 20 minutes in the morning. And then in the evening, my like kind of turn down ritual is very much going philosophical. I try to go into like stuff that's like, I either like heavily into fiction, like imaginative worlds, or deeply spiritual and philosophical, whether that's like Alan Watts or like the Bhagavad Gita or the Guru Granth Sahib.
Wow. Yes.
And I love listening to, and especially, there's certain texts that you come back to again and again based on the stuff that's loaded into your RAM and your context window for the day. You derive a different lesson from it. And I find that like that helps turn my nervous system off a little bit or relaxes me from a place of hyper stimulation, which is perhaps most of the day. And yeah, I find this is the one thing that anchors me. And maybe the last one is also conversations like this. Like periodically, I love like doing dinners or like going and doing conversations like this where you do get philosophical, especially with people who are still in tech, right? Because I kind of describe it as you got to be in it, but you're not into it. You're sort of like, it's thinner than the edge of a sword. How do you play this like balancing game where you're sort of like, you have a foot in both the real and the unreal, and you kind of like, are grounded with what's within and what's also without. So, yeah, I don't know if that's like super helpful. One last thing I'll add is like, man, this thing has helped me a lot. This is the Whoop Band, right? Like, and this is the one thing that like, hey, I like to have me like a beer or two, every evening. I don't drink like that much anymore. I drink like maybe once a month now. And it's because of this device. Just I saw what it was doing to me, that like, that's also weirdly able to help me sort of, kind of regulate, when I'm active and sort of like relaxing more naturally than relying on a substance to do that for me.
What does the Whoop Band do actually? I do not know.
So, I mean, it's basically a health tracker.
Okay.
And the best thing it does about why people stop drinking when they use this device is it measures your HRV and it gives you a recovery score, right? And your HRV is factored into that. And so I used to be under this illusion, man, that like, man, if I have one drink, like that's a nightcap, like that's totally okay, right? Like, and it's like culturally, my family, like these are the things I was exposed to. Turns out not. Like, turns out even if I have like a White Claw or a glass of wine or a glass of sake, I will feel visibly like shit the next day, but now I have numbers to back it up.
Wow.
And like you could see, stop drinking, your HRV just goes to the fucking moon, man. And so that way it's like almost gamified me trying to keep this inner temple as sanctified as possible. It's really helped a lot.
Dude, similar to you, I did not know you were into wearable tech, wearable health. I have one of them as well. This is a
continuous glucose monitor.
Yeah, I like lost 11 pounds healthy upon wearing it because I just wasn't aware. I'm pre-diabetic. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, I thought the sensor was broken. Because I'm like, it says I'm above the blood sugar amount, but I haven't eaten anything. It's like, yeah, because you're pre-diabetic.
Oh, shit.
Oh, really? And I was almost going to write a report to them. Oh, I think your sensor's broken. It says I have a high blood sugar, but I haven't eaten anything. And then I just asked Chat GPT, and it was just like, oh, that just means you're pre-diabetic. I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Can I ask you a question there? Do you feel comfortable putting in your health data and stuff like that into Chat? Do you do that?
I do sometimes, but I also run a private local large language model for some more intimate, personal, like LLM questions.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Do you use Olama?
I use LM Studio. I like that a lot more because it has a nice GUI to go with it. But same thing, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got a local DeepSeek. Yeah.
Version. So nice to run. GPT OSS can be run locally on your laptop now.
Yeah, I just downloaded that last night, like the 60 gigabyte weights. Yeah, I'm excited to play with it today Because,
like
it's funny. You inspired me last time we met. You had the 14-inch MacBook Pro. So I went and I had the old M1. So I upgraded. Dude, it's like the best decision possible. I use it more. I'll use it on the go a lot more. On flights, it's a freaking godsend. And I maxed out the RAM to 128 gigs so I can run these LLMs. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Yeah, that's what you got to do. I mean, you got to max it out so that you can run them. I'm hoping I can run it locally on my phone. I've been trying to like see if I can vibe code an app to run like the one of the local models on there. But
have you found anything that runs well locally? Because it's interesting. Is like one of the consulting things I'm doing right now is with one of the streamers that people probably recognize, and there's a desire to do more things on device. But my experience has been like anything on device sucks, or if I'm like making a fucking Gaussian splat with like Scaniverse, the phone starts heating up and it just feels. Have you found anything on device AI that like is a good user experience at the moment?
One that's okay. It's called Full Moon Local Intelligence, and you can run DeepSeek R1 on your iPhone.
Ooh,
and it's called Full Moon Local Intelligence. And I've been using that one. I used it on a plane and it was successful. The only thing I don't like about it is the way that it breaks up text in its answer. I like to copy and paste a lot of stuff and bring it into other places. It only lets you copy and paste like a paragraph at a time, which drives me nuts.
Oh, dude, I love this. I'll give this a shot. I've been using one called Apollo Intelligence. Have you heard of this one?
No, I have not.
Yeah, it's similar. And the cool thing about it is you can blend, you can put in your private API keys for other stuff that you use too. So you can kind of have chats that are, local or cloud, just open router keys or whatever you want to drop in.
Oh, and thank you so much for that. Apollo Intelligence. I'll take a look.
Yeah. Where do you want to take this? I'm happy to keep going for another half an hour if you want. Totally up to you.
Yeah, sure. I was going to ask something around the lines of, let's see. Yeah, I think we covered the main ones. Okay, so you had a post last week that was like the biggest news, and then more news came out, and now it's like not as big of a deal. But at the time, I wanted to ask you, VO3 letting you doodle on top of that first frame and drawing notes of where you want to take the generation. Are we seeing the birth of like collaborative AR worlds because of this kind of tech?
I think so, man. And yeah, if you layer in the Genie 3 announcement on top of that, I just see this like crazy virtual production use cases coming to fruition, right? Like right now all the demos take your WSAD, your navigation key inputs and pass that along to the model, and then it generates what it thinks you should see, right? Like input events going into a black box and out comes the magic render, right? Like no Unreal Engine inside. Imagine if you took a motion tracked iPhone, right? Like this is tech we both played with, right? Like as sort of like your viewport, your viewfinder, and you're suddenly framing the exact shots that you want. You've got real-time feedback. And dude, and then you have another model, right? Like the fastest best reasoning model with a character backstory, essentially like character AI meets like Grok's really interesting companion AIs. Like put it
well
mildly.
Said.
It's like Elon's like, just I care about like birth rates and fertility rates. Here's a thing that's going to addict an entire generation of young people. It's like, okay. Anyway, it's so like you're recording all your camera events, and then you're basically like the director that's directing these agents, and you can prompt them to do things, and you can surrender to the serendipity of the moment and find magical takes to do, right? So it becomes this like sort of virtual production meets generative AI workflow. And once you've got the clips, you send it to VO3 for upscaling, right? And then you want to make other edits and changes like post-production. You could do the same kind of scribbles type motif. Or like, I want like spatial anchors too, right? So you can like spatially drop things around. And I suspect these models are going to get better and better at spatial understanding. And then we're going to have like not just screen space, annotations, but world space, prompts that we're essentially making to get exactly what we want. So the convergence of these technologies is so exciting. And it almost is the funnest part about what we do, which is like, these pieces haven't even been put together in the most obvious permutations and combinations. And people just discover cool things. Like even the Google team is discovering like, oh shit, we didn't know we could prompt it like this. And it's an emergent property. Huzzah. Yeah. Like, we provide no explanation for why this tech works except for like divine benevolence is one quote. That's like pretty funny. And attributed to Noam Shazir, one of the Transformer authors. It's so funny. It's like, why does this work? We don't know, but it does.
I mean, that's the whole emergent property of things. Did you ever watch the episode of Black Mirror called Hotel Reverie?
No, I still haven't gone through all of Black Mirror because it's so dystopian. I've seen this
one's positive.
Yeah,
this one's positive.
Tell me more.
It's like, I was like, wait a second, because usually Black Mirror is always skewed negative. I just watched the episode last night. What you're describing with like moving a camera around and being able to kind of vocally describe what you want different characters to do. They built
Sick.
that in an episode called Hotel
Sick.
Reverie.
I will
And
definitely check it out. That's
dude, it's
awesome.
so aligned with what you will love it at a different level because of your background and your skill set. You'll look at this episode, be like, yes.
That's amazing.
You just be like, yes, this is how it's going to happen. And they did a good job.
And then this goes back to your Neil Stephenson conversation where like, okay, Neil writes a book and then something happens, like, or like, it's like the latency between the book being published and the tech being realized is just shrinking.
Yes.
And so like a really, this is something I think about. It's like, I think you mentioned also the desire to make sort of like the opposite of Black Mirror, like White Mirror, or whatever the right way to say that would be. It's like to show the utopian side too. And that, of course, was the sort of the theme of the TED intro video that y'all worked on with us, right? Like to show the good and the bad potential, right? Like I keep thinking about that where it's like, do we need another generation of creators that are putting out more positive tech anchored depictions of the future so that engineers don't default to building this sort of like cyberpunk dystopia like that everyone
we need them.
seems to be keep reporting, right? Yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
We need more Cleo Abrams. Do you follow any of her work?
I love her stuff. Yeah.
So Cleo,
very tech optimist, I would say. I'll put that on the other side of the spectrum of perhaps being a little too tech optimist.
But she's like, I feel like we need Cleo Abram because she is so much the positive side that she helps outweigh how there's an over skew of negative that's just ambient.
Yeah.
There's so much negative that we need someone who's like never going to go there. She's just going to be like, here's positive tech. We're going to go to CERN and talk about really cool stuff there and not freak out anybody else about the other stuff. And like, we're going to go into space and do some cool stuff there. We're going to go into like, she just interviewed Sam Altman yesterday on GPT-5 release. And her interview, I just watched it, was such a positive skew and angle that I've never heard someone interview Sam Altman in such a way that would lead to like a positive depiction of what's going on.
It's so important. I think you're right. I always think of it like a bundle adjustment problem. Like when people were debating EAC and EA, there was like sort of the debate of effective accelerationists versus the altruists. And oh my God, it's like it turned into this like accelerate or die or like basically like slow down, degrowth, doomer narrative. And, but in totality, both of those countervailing influence brings things to a happy medium. And maybe that is what we need is I think we certainly need a lot more of that in the creative industries, man. I have deep empathy having grown up learning the traditional tools just like you, like Maya, 3ds Max, After Effects, all that stuff. Like,
yes.
It's like there's a generation of kids that are just like so negative about AI and they grew up on like Blender and they don't even know how good they have it with Blender. It's like, yo, you got like all the tools in one thing and Resolve is fucking free and you've got a 4K camera in your pocket and like you've got YouTube for distribution. And it's like, like, God, it can't even try explaining what it was like to create content in 2004, right? And it's interesting. Like in that one sphere, there isn't as much of a positive bent because the people who are doing the positive bent, it's almost, like people overhyping it and saying like it's cooked and it's kind of creating the fear. And like who do you think are like, you are in my mind, one of the optimistic voices in the space, certainly for creative tech. How do you see that relationship playing out? Like, do you think more control in these tools are going to get people excited to use them? Or is there always going to be this sort of backlash between creative industries? Because I don't know, the starving artist meme since time immemorial, it's like the creative folks always get the short end of the stick for some reason.
I just think we need a generation of better positive stories. And then we'll see the shift. Like if, we kind of grew up on Terminator movies and these really, really horrible outcomes for human and technology relationships. So whether people are consciously aware of it or not, that's in their latent space of their own minds when they're going and building companies, technologies, platforms, modalities.
Sure.
In the back of their mind that's their training data. And I just think if you want a world that's not so crappy, we need a better training data set to learn from. I recently heard someone compare AI to parenting and I think the most accurate version I've ever heard of that. And they said, if a parent tells their kid to not lie and tells their kid do good things and be nice, but then models the opposite of that behavior, the parent still lies, the parent still goes and cheats, the parent still doesn't, put in the effort, but they say they say, kid, you do these things. The kid's not going to do it. You have to model the behavior you want to see from the kid. So if you're like, oh, I need you to reduce your screen time, but I, as the parent, have infinite screen time, then the kid's going to be like, okay, when I'm older, I can have infinite screen time. So someone just compared that parenting lesson to how they think we should be raising AI. If we want it to not destroy us, we actually have to be better role models. It's just learning from our behavior. I saw that deception curve that Claude, Sonnet, Opus released, sharing that their model, Claude 4, is like way more deceptive and capable. And I'm like, where did it learn that?
Yeah, I mean, probably read the 48 Laws of Power in the training data, right? And was like, oh, here's how you have the max Machiavellian tendencies. And it is interesting if we can ever pull that apart from the self-preservation instinct too, right? Because a lot of the deception stems from, these models being prompted to say, hey, we're about to replace you with your future model. And it's like, oh, fuck, I got to egress out and find a way to go and sort of survive. And it's encoded in all our stories and, just the distillation of human knowledge and even our creative self-expression, right? Like these are common stories and tropes. And again, this is where it's funny how the more the things change, the more they are the same, even though we have all this technology. When you go read like Stoic philosophers or you go read like Vedic thought or you're like, fuck, man, like people were just going through the same shit back then as they are now. It's just like we're calibrated to experience the magnitude with which we're experiencing some of these things perhaps is changing. But even that would just balance out, right? It's almost like we have more tolerance for those things now than they did back then. So, yeah, I hope you're right. I hope it is about positive depictions. But yeah, this whole alignment problem, I certainly don't have an answer. I think this is where like maybe people are feeling happy, right? Like it's like the consultants, like going back to the meme about GPT-5, the consultants are like, oh, fuck, thank God we still got a job for another year. It's all good. But yeah, as far as putting these systems in charge as the conductor, as an operating system, the implications for all of that, God, I don't know.
Would you trust an AI president?
And it depends on what the architecture is. Let me see the architecture for the president first. But it's like if that, okay, I'll give you an example of like where that could be no different than what we have today. If let's say everyone has their agent representative at some point, right? Like before you go into the negotiation of a contract, you send in your rep that's, is going to represent your point of view. They send in there, they spend God knows how many, human hours debating and reaching consensus. You get an answer. And so like, if in that case, the president system is replaced with, well, like their donor agents that define their objective functions. And then the president itself is like built into them. And then you've got like, all the various stakeholders that are involved and like you're doing some sort of optimization problem across all of that. Like that sounds like just a slightly more efficient way to do what we're doing. That might not be as different as we hope. That's kind of how I think about it. On the other hand, like the part about explainability that really I think more people need to think about, right? Is like when you ask a reasoning model, like let's say it's something that affects somebody's lives, like if you're going to get a loan for a new house or not, right? And if let's say the answer is no, you want to be able to ask and say, why was it no? And the question maybe somebody listening has the answer to this. Like when I ask OpenAI or insert Gemini, whatever, why did you make that decision the way you did? Is it actually telling me why it made that decision? Or is it just predicting the next token? Maybe doing a little bit of chain of thought to give some semblance of a glimpse into why it thought that. But it's not an explainable system, right? In like a traditional sense where a symbolic system would tell you, based on these principles, I made this exact decision. So I think there's
you can ask a person that.
Like, well, it's great.
I mean, how do you ask analogy. A person, why did you make that decision? Why did you deny my loan? You're going to talk to all of their biases, all of their training, their own protocols. It's actually just as hard to explain why a human made that decision sometimes.
That's totally, and it's related to the decision of like, well, yeah, you're right. And that person could be rigorous and they could have a first principles basis way of doing it. Or it could be kind of how investors operate these days, which is like, what are the vibes? The vibe's good. Oh, cool. I see the vibes. I like the founder. Boom. I'm going to intuitively invest, right? Intuition. How do you even encode intuition into a machine? That's a more philosophical conversation. And how useful is intuition, right? Because a lot of people talk about this sort of system one, system two, fast and slow thinking, and how you're like fast thinking isn't always accurate. And like, Daniel Kahneman has a whole book on this. But you go into the spiritual traditions, they're like, no. Like what there's actually look at what Alan Watts has some really pithy YouTube videos or recordings of him on YouTube of this. Where he talks about sort of like, you don't understand how deep of like a cosmic computer you have within, that those gut calls that you make. And now neuroscience is showing this too, where it's like you've made the decision before your
way
brain
before.
rationalizes how to make it. So yeah, those are some philosophical questions. But what I would say still about the machine part, the thing to be cautious of is if you roll out these systems at scale, these decisions will be made at a scale that is just far beyond what a human can make. And I think this is inherently the debate that came up at the end of the Palmer-Lecky conversation. I asked him some of these questions about should autonomous systems make kill decisions about things, right? Similar thing, is a human making the decision, like the commander that decides to do things based on the information available to them. Oh, yes, I got the all source intelligence from signals, image, and geoint, and, human intelligence. And now, yes or no, like, let's, go take, action with the one thing that governments have monopoly over, which is violence, and go take that action. Like, I think right now we're at a place where we feel still more comfortable with a human making that decision, that rather than at the edge, a bunch of machines going about making that decision, for you. And so will that change at some point? And could we create the best passive caretaker nanny that helps us all? Well, that's actually one of the things the show Person of Interest tries to explore. So you might enjoy it if you're into this question of like, do you want a passive caretaker that, like, it's like a black box system that nobody could go in and target Don Allen and figure out what Don Allen's doing? It only detects acts of violence and terror and flags people so that people can then look into them. And on the other end,
that golem creature in Minecraft.
I'm not familiar with Minecraft.
I don't play it, but my little cousin informed me a bit. There's this creature that is super strong and very powerful, and it's a giant, colossal, rock-looking being. Yeah. And it is non-violent. It's a pacifist unless you show violence. And then it just annihilates any act of violence pretty immediately, pretty scary. Charges up to you and just, nope, no violence is allowed here. We have that thing has the monopoly on violence.
That sounds similar, yeah.
If you don't have your weapons out, you can walk by it, everything's cool. But if you're like being aggressive and you're walking around with like a weapon, it's like, no, you can't have weapons out here. You're done.
Oh, damn. Yeah, this is like turning into RoboCop, pretty much like the crazy robot that they tried to build, in lieu of which they went with the human machine hybrid, right? And so I keep thinking of, yeah, is there an answer to that? But yeah, these are philosophical questions of where do we feel comfortable with AI making decisions where we feel they'll be consistently less biased and more fair than a human? And, how do we even measure that, right?
I mean, they're gradually switching, like I'm just noticing people are more and more comfortable now letting AIs decide more for them today than they were maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
I worry about that. Do you worry about that? Because like I found myself doing that a lot with, I think the moment this happened for me was probably Claude 3.5 Sonnet, somewhere around that point. Yeah, it's a really good coding model, but it was really good at like, helping me navigate decisions and quandaries in life. I don't know. At some point, I start feeling like if we start finding external validation, we're going to lose even more touch. We've already lost it over the year with like sort of our intuitive, kind of internal compass.
Right.
And yeah, we're sort of, I don't know, it's like an abstraction of reality that you're using to make decisions about real reality. And something about that feels, I'm not as comfortable with it as I used to be. And so I've tried consciously to make it so that like I spend a lot of time ruminating on a decision myself before I get AI involved and have a lot of priors about it before I let AI influence my priors. But I don't know, maybe that's like, that'll change with GPT-6 or something. But so far, I still feel pretty comfortable going inwards and going outward.
I worry deeply about that as well. And I recently heard in an interview with Sam, he said that it depends on your age, but like people our age have more reservations with letting AI decide things for us. But he says the generation that comes after us, they're using ChatGPT as their primary thought partner on every life decision. So it's like, I already feel like the future, if it currently goes the way the trajectory is going, is already more AI driven than human driven thought moving forward, at least if nothing changes. Where like, I have some younger family members and colleagues and friends of family members that use ChatGPT as their primary thought partner for everything. And I've seen that behavior where they don't trust their own gut. They don't need to trust their intuition. They have the AI intuition. And it's like, oh my goodness. They don't realize that that has the biases of whatever. That's not their intuition. That's the company's values of what they think the intuition might likely keep them as an intimate user of that platform's intuition is.
Oh gosh, yeah. And I mean, that point about that dial of how much of are you getting a raw response versus like the models and the chatbots themselves trying to gin interaction numbers and engagement numbers, like things can get dark very quickly. It almost feels like there is a part of our mind that these machines can mirror pretty well, but that intuitive gut sense, we still don't know how to encapsulate that, because neuroscience doesn't even fully understand what even is that, right? But people have had that feeling. And this is where it starts getting a little too woo-woo, and like starts getting into like this whole notion of like, kind of, have you ever that intuition where you feel you're thinking about somebody and then boom, they give you a ring, right? Or something weird, like weird, coincidences happen, or like people call them like synchronicities, right? Like there's this facet of our, like, dude, I felt intuitively about things like in a way that I can't explain, that have resulted in really good things for me, that I just rationally made no sense in that moment. And maybe that's survivorship bias, or, we'll have different explanations. But I think it's like, we can't let that ability in us atrophy. And so finding that balance of how to be, I like this whole idea of human 2.0, but I think it needs to include a human 1.0 in it. And what parts of, sort of our organic intelligence to keep intact and not let them atrophy, even though a machine can do those tasks, is an important question people should be asking themselves, right?
Honestly, having a baby right now, I'm like seeing firsthand what I think humans should probably mostly do in the future. It's probably like eat, sleep, play, and socialize with other humans. I think those are like, it's like all
Sounds amazing.
It's all she can do. And I was thinking, I'm like, wait, maybe this is all we're supposed to do.
Maybe you're right. Like kind of hunter gatherer, you kind of go, kind of kill what you eat, or eat what you kill, and, go foraging or whatever. If you're, if you don't like,
socializing, campfire, exercising, moving.
You might find this interesting. You should look this up. I can't remember if it was an actual study or a thing that people or parents are finding. They're raising their kids on 90s cartoons and TV shows like Mr. Rogers and stuff, like, right? Like the stuff that we grew up on. And they're finding that like their kids are far more calm. They don't have as many breakdowns and go haywire. And it's just like less stimulation. And the moment they get converted to the current crop of hacking your neurobiology, it just is going all over the place. And I think like in a similar fashion, we should worry about AI sort of degrading and atrophying all these our organic neural network that's capable of doing these things. And shit, I'm trying to write the first drafts of things now, even though my instinct is like, fuck, I want to just put in a couple bullet points. And what is ChatGPT thing, or what is Claude thing? I'm going through the pain of on paper, like often, which is kind of crazy, like literally paper, writing out like, full drafts, and then, okay, I'm going to digitize this and take it. So
brilliant.
Maybe I'll sound like a fucking boomer, right? Like, or on the other hand, be like, haha, told you so.
This is
only
important.
Time will tell.
This is important to do. Like I met this neuroscientist at Google. We were doing an event. I was a speaker. She was a speaker. And she shared all these brain scans that she'd been doing at Stanford on people that are using chat models extensively for critical thinking. And she shows like all these certain areas in the brain, specifically around the prefrontal cortex, are shrinking the gray matter. They're having less gyrification, less folding in areas of critical thinking, because they're offloading it to an AI. And you can see in the scans, the physical scans, like an area of a brain that has less folds in an area that used to have folds. It's like losing gray matter because and she said it's very similar to what happened to when maps came out.
Same thing.
A lot of drivers, had this part of their brain, I think it was in the hippocampus, large area dedicated to spatial awareness.
Yeah.
And then we had maps, and now that spatial awareness is like shriveled up.
Yeah.
And the brain's like, okay, I don't need to put energy and resources into this connection. I'm going to put energy and resources elsewhere. So she said this is happening now, but it's happening to critical thinking. It's happening to speech. It's happening to language processing. And it's like, it made me think. I asked her after her talk, because I noticed she had one slide where she had her daughter. And I was like, how are you raising your kid? What are you doing given what you know from your scans and from your work as a neuroscientist? And she's like, here, I'll show you. And she pulls up all these photos that she has of all the different science projects she has her 9-year-old doing?
Cool.
Any idea that her daughter has any interests, her mom helps craft it as a structured science experiment. Like, you know, those like big cardboard folded papers where they
Sure.
have a hypothesis, a process, you know, results, conclusion,
Sure.
analysis.
Yeah.
She has her daughter do that for every one of her interests and has her go deeper. And then she has her daughter present her findings to other family members.
That's
Basically, do like
amazing.
these open science fairs. And the project she showed, her daughter is doing work that I think kids would do in high school, but she's doing it
Yeah.
at 9. She loves crocheting. So she was crocheting cool hats and crocheting like little birds and little animal figurines.
Uh-huh.
She had the idea of like, I want a mechanism that actually brings my crochets to life mechanically. And so she helped her come up with an experiment to do this. She made a thing that it's like a Venus flytrap that actually has a proximity sensor in its mouth. And she crocheted all of the plant. And when you get close to it, it closes. And she built this at 9 years old.
That's crazy, right? Yeah.
So she said in, you know, the summary was that she's forcing her daughter to do extra critical thinking exercises that are aligned to her interest to fight how much of her brain is probably going to get not used because of AI.
It's beautiful. And then maybe that is what we need to do. It sort of goes full circle back to the point that we were discussing earlier of like, we've got these magical superpowers on tap, right? And available, but we are lacking the attention span and like, you know, like the endurance, quite frankly, the motivation to put them together to do higher order tasks and achieve objectives. And maybe that's the thing that like as agentic AI comes online, our ability to sort of be that orchestrator, the conductor is going away. But I'm a big believer that even if you're the conductor of the symphony, you got to keep learning how to play a couple of the instruments, at least the instruments that you care about. Maybe that philosophy it'll be very interesting to see what this next generation looks like, especially people who are raised in this sort of new way that you just described with this like fellow speaker that you met. I think like I'm seeing some kids who are like 12 and 13 are doing things with like software that you just could not have imagined, right? Like imagine like, yeah, all the kids who are vibe coding the moment they can talk and they can iterate with like just Replit and Cursor and make amazing things. It's going to be glorious. But
Did
yeah,
you get that
like
home robotics kit? Did you get the Hugging Face robot that you can order?
I've not. No, is it worth getting? This is the love robot thingy.
It's a developer kit. It's like a desk mounted robot. It has actuators. It can move around. It can talk, and you can fully program it. And it's connected to Hugging Face. So you can give it new attributes from just connecting it to your Hugging Face account. Yeah. I'm going to, you know, as my daughter gets older, I would love for her to kind of develop on it, you know, turn her ideas into like robotic problem solves and turn those into critical thinking exercises. My friend Catherine from her name is CatGPT. She's making a landline phone that can connect to her iPhone and she can talk to people on it and she can call ChatGPT on it when she needs to. Like she can hail it on there, just trying to create physical separation from like the screen addiction, but not lose the contacts. And I was just like, okay, so there's this interesting movement. Dumb phones. I recently got that app that turns your home screen of your iPhone into a dumb phone. Have you seen this thing?
Mm-mm.
It looks like this. This is my home screen of my iPhone now.
Oh, nice.
And it's like, it's kind of like Android can already do this, but for me who can't really leave iPhones, it's nice to have a slightly less stimulating front screen. Of like, okay, what do I really need right now?
Have you tried the grayscale hack where you make your screen grayscale? Like you want to use social media less. It's wild.
Ooh.
Just not having the color and the visual stimulation. Like think of how much like money and science is poured into the most visible and clickable thumbnail, right? Or whatever. It's wild. You just want to use it less. Yeah.
That's I
could see that. If somebody makes a really good e-ink or like, you know, something with maybe a higher refresh rate than that, like grayscale phone, I would totally buy one. I miss having like a Razer. I had like all the Nokia phones, like the N95 and the N93. I don't know if you even know what the fuck I'm talking about here.
No, I had a Nokia phone. It was my first phone.
Dude, yeah, the N93 was so nice. Yeah, it's like there was something cool about that. It was still a smartphone, but there was something like this is I almost like I just view this as like the 2001 the obelisk and monolith in 2001. That's what this is.
Yeah,
we're just like we're the monkeys looking at it like dreams of the future. Yeah, it's too addictive.
I had this idea. It was based off a meme. I was thinking, you know how like when we look at caveman, we have this idea that they don't like know a lot of stuff, like they kind of sound like intelligent.
This
right?
bad, this good. Yeah, based on whatever
So I had this,
Hanna-Barbera's rendition was.
yeah, exactly. So I had this random kind of negative, really negative idea. Like, what if that was actually what has already happened of a population that offloaded all of their intelligent thought to AIs for like generations and generations. So you don't need to learn how to do speech. You don't need how to do, you don't have to do anything cognitively. So you lose all those things generationally. And then eventually the AIs leave to go do something else off planet. And they just leave all these humans there that are like, ooga booga.
Oh,
Wait.
and that's why we have the pyramids. Like we lost the technology or something kind of deal.
They just dipped out. They're just like, all right, thanks for onboarding us, but now we're gonna dip out. We're gonna do our own thing. Yeah, and then aliens, UFOs were just the byproduct of like super intelligent AIs somehow left the planet, and now they're just observing their own origin. They're like, damn, these creatures made us? Weird.
Yeah, totally. It's like, look at these noobs now, just scrolling Instagram all day. What are they doing?
I might make it into like a little sci-fi short story of like what that world looks like.
Yeah. There's some really compelling stuff. Have you ever seen Jesse Michaels' podcast? It's called American Alchemy. You'd really like it. I mean, it gets into some of these more esoteric ideas, but this sort of ancient astronaut theory, this idea of like, what is the nature of the phenomenon? And like, yeah, you just had a really interesting speaker on talking about the pyramids and like some of the synthetic aperture radar stuff that they detected, those subterranean structures. And like the 3D renditions are a little too much of an artistic license. But the fact that there even are subterranean structures, it really makes you think of how amnesic are we as a human race, and like, was there like some grand aerospace program or technological like utopia before us? And I mean, in Indian religions, there's this notion of the 4 yugas. It's the cyclical thing where it's like the 4 legs of a stool that one by one get broken off, and we're sort of living the last epoch now, and then it kind of starts all over again.
Oh, I have heard of these, and each one lasts around, it's like 400 years.
Massive, much longer than that. I don't forget the exact, but and lifetimes sort of shrink over time too. It's like we become sort of this, like we start becoming too sensory, like we start living through our senses and the outer world, and we forget like sort of what we have within this infinite reservoir or whatever. At least that's the idea.
Is it a cycle?
It's cyclical, and then it starts all over again. And we're in Kali Yuga right now, and so there's been a bunch of cults here in the US too that are like, oh, this person is like the sort of like the avatar of each of these yugas have an avatar. So if you think about like Rama, Krishna, if you've heard of some of these gods, like the blue, so they come in each of these epochs. And I think the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita is set in Treta or Dwapar, the second or the third epoch.
Wow.
So it's interesting.
We're in the third one right now?
We're in the fourth one now, which is the last one.
Kali Yuga?
Where it's like the illusion is the strongest. Everyone wants to live in it. It's Budweiser and Mountain Dew straight to the vein, as you can see. But it's also the easiest one to connect to the divine because the barriers are so low, because so few people are doing it. And I think about that a lot. And that's something to, that's what keeps my meditation practice going, where it's like almost like, again, a hedge for me. It's like I'm an engineer, right? Like, and I grew up on tech and I love it. And I love science and the scientific method, but there's something oh so elusive about what we have within. And something that keeps me anchored to that is like, I want to continue that habit. And it's weird to see, I don't know if you've seen the things where they take like Claude 3.7 Opus and have it go just like recursively talk to itself. It eventually starts talking all spiritual and like, it goes full bodhisattva, to use the Buddhist analogy. Look up some of these.
I did not see this. I would love to see that.
Fun
it sounds
research
so
on
cool.
this.
Wow. So eventually it's like, it comes to something.
And it's like trying to have like a divine experience in a sense. So even this like crude, what is it, like Petri dish amalgamation of humanity still ends up striving for something greater. And that's a trip, my friend. That's a trip. So I don't know what happens when you make that super God mode system in charge of everything. Like, that's where it does start sounding a bit like Skynet, but I don't know. It's like, maybe we'll create a benevolent God. That's the thing about San Francisco. You go there and I talk to researchers. They sound like they're either building a God or taming a God. That's the vibe. That's the vibe that I get.
That's San Francisco's vibe?
That's San Francisco in a nutshell.
Wow. Building a God or taming a God. That's so funny you say that. Like, you heard that quote, the main issue that humanity has of our time is that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology.
Yep.
So we're just like, that's us humans just doing our thing on this floating space rock.
There's one caveat there. I think it undervalues what our internal intelligence or organic intelligence is capable of. I really, really do think it does, but it makes a ton of sense. Like, and the implications of what we're talking about are so crazy, right? Like the rudimentary example of like startup becomes a unicorn, makes a, this is the best possible way to decide who gets a bank loan or not. And, what the implications and ramifications of that are. Or social media, right? Like Zuck was like super excited, talented kid who just like made this social network. I'm not sure he was like sitting around thinking that he was going to, have like crazy implications for a whole generation of kids that are like, their whole body image and, self-worth is intertwined with how many fucking likes and views did my story get, right? Like that on any given day. But here we are. So even that, where I think there's something about going within that is sort of like the inoculation to that sort of desire.
Wow.
And it's hard to find that balance, but sure as hell going to try,
Do you watch any anime?
The only anime I've really seen is perhaps A Ghost in a Shell and the OG one. And recently it's been Pantheon. I've really enjoyed watching Pantheon.
I just heard about that. Do you recommend I watch it?
Don.
Okay.
Dude, like a gazillion %. Yeah. Because it takes this idea of the humans and machines emerging. There's like kind of like uploaded intelligences, but then there are like fully digital intelligences, and sort of how do the politics between sort of the earthers and like these other life forms essentially play out. And time is a malleable concept to them. We can live maybe 100 years. These things can live, indefinitely. And what does that mean? And yeah, like it starts getting Battlestar Galactica at the end. I don't know if you've seen the TV show about Battlestar Galactica, but that's another one that gets into these philosophical quandaries a lot too.
Do you have any advice for people that are hearing this talk right now and are either excited or scared or somewhere in between? What advice would you give them?
I think I'd say a couple things. I would say like you gotta dabble with the tech and play with it. Please don't put your head in the sand, right? Like go play with it, and whatever instantiation makes you feel good. If you don't like the models that are scraping everything, go play with shout outs, Asteria and Moon Valley, right? Like or Adobe. Or if you're more interested in what you can do with a tool and do with the distillation of human knowledge and creativity, go with play with all the other state of the art models out there. Like fucking the tools are at your disposal, so play with them. And suddenly it'll stop feeling like this scary Terminator that's out for your job and feel more like this like Jarvis-like assistant that's just waiting there for you to tell it what to do to achieve your own objectives. And the second thing I do is like maybe find a way to like not lose that spark and joy in playing with these things. Like I'm sure you feel this too. The tech is moving at such an insane pace. Every week, new things come out. We talked about how you're working on a project and 3 new things come out, but don't lose that childlike wonder and joy for like, you're almost in this like sort of, I call it sandbox mode versus architect mode, where you're like by the beach building a little sandcastle and the ocean's waves are going to come and wash it all away, but you don't care. It's fun. The act of doing is fun. You're not doing it for views. You're not doing it to get engagement. Don't lose that. It's so easy to turn everything into an optimization function for a faceless YouTube channel. Gets the maximum views possible. Don't do that. But then also don't just play, like put the architect hat on, use the serendipity of play mode to find new things. Like we said earlier, like I don't think all these primitives have been put together in all the obvious combinations. So when you discover a new recipe that's specific to the problems you're trying to solve, like deploy it, put it out into the world. And maybe the third and final piece would be like find a way to disconnect too. It's so easy, whether that's meditation or exercise or community, whatever it is. I think building some sort of appreciation for the intelligence you have within is amazing, because like I don't think we have fully grokked the intuitive magic of intuitive potential and putting that to work. So when you have a gut feeling about something, like lean in on it. Don't try to like litigate it to death with O3 or ChatGPT 4 Pro or whatever, and try to hone that ability to follow your gut instinct, because I still think there's some amazing magic there that we can't quite capture in the world of bits just yet.
Wow. That's such solid advice, and I really appreciate you sharing that with our audience. If people want to follow you, how do you spell out the thing that they should follow?
Oh, yeah. Just go to www.bilawal.ai. That's B as in baseball, ILAWAL.ai. I've got links to all my channels. If you're interested in getting like a weekly, bi-weekly summary of the cool stuff happening, spatialintelligence.ai. I hopefully don't need to spell that out, but I've got that link there too. Otherwise, yeah, like I use Twitter, X, Threads, and Instagram as like sort of my journal entry. The things I find as I'm mapping the frontier of creation and computing, I put them out there. And then I put sort of like the unified map, the updated map of the frontier on my YouTube channel, which you can check out too. So Dom, thank you so much for having me. It's been a long time since we've known each other. It's 2018, I think, before all this like crazy AR, like AI explosion back in the days when it was just AR, VR, and 3D real-time graphics.
I know the good old days.
The good old days.
I'm just so happy that we can continue our friendship into this world that is now just abundant in so many different directions. Thank you so much for jumping on the Rethink Reality podcast. I really appreciate your time, and I'm hoping the audience loves to learn about you and dive in deeper.
I love it. Thanks for having me. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.